welcome. So I don't know why I'm about to pick up a picture, which I don't have because I know it's on the screen in front of me. So apologies for that. Just too excited about today because today is Emotional Freedom Technique, EFT. Some people call it tapping. It's one of the when I say it's one of the most simple techniques, everything I guess I do is simple and powerful. I like to keep things simple. So whether it's the breathing techniques, or just the concept of explaining mindfulness, or really taking the principles of mindfulness to kind of hone practice, keep things simple. Emotional freedom technique came into I guess be known as emotional freedom technique in 1995, but as with anything, in some respects it was reinventing the wheel. It's nothing new, but it was based upon I think it was 3 other techniques. One of the techniques, it has its origins in kind of Chinese medicine, and also a mixture of kinesiology, which is using it's kind of muscle test. I don't know if anybody's come across that. It's muscle testing to show any underlying symptoms in the body, just to see where the balance is. And there was a really complex technique being taught at the time in America, which a kinesiologist and practicing medical doctor had discovered that by pressing certain points, he alleviated certain symptoms. But he had a huge manual which basically depicted, for this, press these points, for this, press these points. And the name of the man, who I've just forgotten the right name, Mr. Craig, it'll come to me in a minute, in 95, realized that there was a commonality between them all, and that if you just generally did X number of points, it actually helped everything, always. And so that's where EFT was born from. Gary Craig is the gentleman's name, and today Gary has a website called Emo Free, EMO maybe underscore Emo Free, Emotions Free, where he has continued the practice and expanded it, and all the resources are free there to be had. You can pay for things, but it's free, and he has he's expanded his things. So I would say, just depending upon your own individual beliefs, when you go there, just pick out the pieces that resonate for you. And I mean, today I'm going to give you what I would call a high level introduction, but it's all, for want of word, the meat. This is the stuff that I will always use in a session, and I will always share with people to kind of create meaningful change. And it's something you can always come back to. So I haven't finished. Any initial curiosities that you want answered, or are you just kind of just get on with Andrew? Okay, just get on with Andrew.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Let me just let me share this document on the screen. So hopefully you can all see this in its entirety. Let me just shrink it down. Perhaps it needs. Whoa! Or close it. Damn. I love it when a plan comes together. 1 second, caller. There we go. I'll just leave it as it is for now. Okay. Basically here, I mean, I'll talk through all of this wording, so don't bother reading at the moment. All I want to highlight is this section here, this character, which and save any copyright issues I had drawn and paid for. This is my original artwork. Sorry, not personally, but bought. These are just highlighting the points that we tap on. This is referred to as the basic recipe, and there are some shortcuts which I'll talk about. And one of the things I'll highlight here, so these are acupressure points on the body, which I guess if you were talking about acupuncture, they would be really fine and precise with a needle. But here, this is kind of, I like to think of acupuncture with a hammer, because we're just using two fingers and we're going to get near thereabout. We're going to have the same effects. So I'm either using two fingers when I'm tapping. And again, when I might lift a hand up, but it's any hand, your preference, or when I'm the top of the head, or maybe with the side of the body, I just use the flat of my hand here. Yeah, so these are the points we're going to be touching on. I'm just going to highlight that you'll see this finger, and hopefully you can see the cursor on the screen. You notice there's not a point on this finger, but when I'm working with anybody, and you'll see me in a moment, I will do every finger, purely because it's more hassle to think about forgetting it than so you just carry on and do it all. Okay. So how and why is this effective? So if you imagine, this is effective when we talk about emotions, and any emotions. In fact, it could be, if we have any thoughts in the brain, then I like to think about this, and we've maybe spoke about within mindfulness, the echo in the body. Because if our thoughts, and as I showed the other day about how we see the world, our thoughts will influence our physiology, and they can manifest through aches, pains, tension, tightness, discomfort. They'll got, if we're anxious at all, you can butterflies in the stomach. We have this echo in the body, which is a symptom, or origins can be thought of thoughts in our head. And perhaps you can imagine that because we have this, that our thoughts are the echo, can be, we can think about it as the body is generating or changing its chemistry to create that effect. There is some mechanism that's coming from here, then echoed in the body. And we can only imagine that to be through, there's a signal to communicate that. And perhaps that's chemistry being created. And I say perhaps, I'm not a medical doctor. I don't have that insight. This is just how I see things happening and how I like to explain them. So to do this, so if somebody comes to me who is suffering with, let's say, I'm going to pick out the word, who's anxious about something. So I will have a conversation up front to understand what the key phrases are, what maybe the words that are running in somebody's head, what's the problem, and we'll then start. Because so we know what the problem is, then we'll know what the intention is, because the intention would be maybe to let go of this, or be the complete opposite. So within the sheet, which I can make accessible to people, what we start is, camera presence, Andrew, camera presence, move over here. We start by tapping on what's called the karate chop point. When do I? So basically, it's we tap on here, and this is where I'm using the flat of the hand. And again, it could be any hand, any side. And we do a setup statement. And this is basically, we're just saying our intention of what we want to do. And we say it 3 times. And there's 2 ways of doing it. So if I'm talking about the scenario of anxiety here, I would talk about, we'll have a conversation. We'll say, okay, even though I'm anxious, I have this anxiety. And it could be simple. I'll end it by saying, and I choose to change. Okay, so I'll say it 3 times. Even though I have this anxiety, I'm anxious, I can choose to change. Even though I'm anxious, I have this anxiety, I can choose to change. So that would be the setup statement. And that would be quite a safe setup statement. But what I will always invite the person I'm working with to try on to see how this feels is I'll ask them to say, even though, and if, okay, we're using an example of anxiety, I have this anxiety, I'm anxious. I will end it, or I will invite them to say, I deeply and completely accept myself, love and forgive myself. Now that is a more powerful phrase to use, because it's much more meaningful, and and you can generate a strong felt sense in the body. Now that would be my preference, but depending upon the starting position with the person, whether they're ready to say that or not, it's an invitation. So, okay, so that's our setup statement. So that's our intention of what we want to do. And it can be as simple or as elaborate as we need it to be. And because in a minute, I'll get you guys to do something with me, and we'll keep it very generic, but it's still meaningful, because it's meaningful to you. Okay, we've done a setup statement. So at this point, or go around all of the points to tap on. And at this point, I'm going to remove my glasses because I do have a habit of hitting them flying. Okay, so my first point is top of the head. So I'm just using the flat of hand again, either hand. I'm just kind of just tapping gently. It's, you know, it doesn't need, we're just basically, in some respects, we're just moving the skin. We're just gently tapping. Now, if anybody asks me how many times, I would say, okay, 7, maybe 7 times. But when I'm having a conversation, I'll always tap with the person. At this point, I'm saying key phrases or key words, and I'm encouraging and inviting the person I'm with to say them as well. So it could be just as simple as anxious, anxiety, aches, pains, anxiety, stress, whatever the key words are that we've discussed. This is what we'll be saying. And I'll always encourage the person to share whatever they're thinking. Okay, the next point, this point I'll transition to using 2 fingers, again, either hand. So I'm going for a corner of an eyebrow. So literally where, oh, camera presence. Okay, just the corner here, or it could be the other hand. It's, oh dear God. I really shouldn't be looking at myself on the screen and just doing it. Or the other eye, so either hand, either side, it's up to you. Okay, so I'm just tapping here. This is the next point. And again, I'll just use those keywords and key phrases, whether it's anxious, stress, worried, anxious, stress, worried. The interesting thing is during the process, and we've only done 2 points now, it's interesting how the thoughts evolve and change. The conversation, because I'm always having a conversation, that will change and evolve. Okay, so maybe we've done our 7 points here. Again, we're just gently tapping, no pain, no discomfort. If there is ever pain or discomfort, I always tell the person to stop and pause, and we'll move to the next one. So we're always having that constant communication. So again, so I'm following the eyebrow around to the next point, and this is the corner of the eye.
Andrew, can I ask you a question whilst you're talking and tapping? This is primarily for thoughts. Does it help with physical things like pain or people that suffer with chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, those sorts of chronic pain? Would it help with that, do you think, or is it the mind control over the pain?
Okay, so all I'm saying is, so I'm not going to say it's going to fix any specific condition, because I can't say that, I'm not a doctor. All I can say is yes, that it will influence, it will change, it will have effects on the physical felt condition in the body, because the thoughts are echoed in the body. So my open conversation is to understand how the person is thinking, what they're experiencing, and then my conversation through tapping is to use the keywords and phrases that are going on whilst they're having the physical symptoms and conditions. So whether it's discomfort, pain, or whether it's a deep thought pattern that's limiting behavior, it's always the same, because I want to understand the thought process that's going on. So that's just I guess a long way of saying yes, it is for physical manifestations as well. Okay, so yeah, so on the corner of the eye, that's the next point. From there, again, we're just following the eye socket round to the center under the eye. Again, it's either side, either hand, and if it gets tired, then just swap hands. It's not a problem. The next point is under the nose. The next point is on the chin. Okay, the next point is the collarbones. Now, I always I just take a wide hand, and I'm just kind of basically tapping high on the chest here, just so I'm touching the collarbones. Okay, so the next point in the diagram is under the arm. Camera presence. Okay, so from there, this is where we start moving on to the fingers. And if I can pull this off, it'll be a miracle. All right, so we're tapping, the points to tap on are the junction. It's where we're touching skin and nail. So it's that junction here where the nail meets the skin, the nail bed. So we're just touching on the side. We start with the thumb. So I'm just tapping now, just using a single finger now. You can use 2 fingers, whatever is comfortable to do. And some of you may already just feeling when and only maybe now when I bring it to your attention, if you're doing this with me, you might feel an echo in the body. Because interesting, with my thumb, I'm feeling this in my stomach. Okay, then we're moving on to the next finger. So in turn, through conversation, I will just be saying, okay, next finger. And as I said before, when we go to this one, there isn't actually an acupressure point here, but in fact, it's easier just to do it than not to do it. Okay, I'm going to set that finger. And then the finishing point of the basic recipe, the round, is again on the karate chop point. And from there, when we finish that round, I just pause and I'll invite the person I'm working with to take a deep breath. Just to relax. Now, that's the basic recipe. And I should have mentioned beforehand, I will always ask the person to rate on a scale of 0 to 10, a subjective score for them of how they're experiencing whatever they're experiencing. And then when we finish, I'll ask them to check in again. Now, it doesn't mean it will always go down, because sometimes it'll go up. But I'm looking to create a change where whatever we've started with to come down, ideally to a 1 or 2. And there's it was interesting, Sarah, you mentioned pain, because there's an interesting phenomenon within EFT called chasing the pain. Because when you start, and it could be this pain, and you know where the pain is, and it may start here, but by the end of the round, it could be somewhere else completely. So you actually almost chase it out of the body until it's gone. So that's called chasing the pain. And I'm not categorically saying here it's going to work for everybody. I would expect it to have an influence, because even though I'm going through some explanations here, this simply works. And again, I can't tell you exactly why it works. I can tell you my way I'm seeing things. So before I go on to making something generic and general for invite you to kind of tap along with me, any questions, any thoughts?
I think exactly what you've just said. If nothing else, you're stopping down, you're slowing down, you're taking stock, and you're linking it to the rest of what you've done of the previous weeks. You're being mindful about where you're tapping, and you're concentrating on your thoughts, aren't you? So even that part of it, of the process, is grounding.
Yeah, and it is that is a very individual experience. The fascinating point, maybe just to draw attention to, is how things evolve. And maybe I hinted at the beginning there, is we'll start with an intention. We'll know the keywords, the phrases, the thought pattern that's going on, and how we're experiencing that in the body. And as we go through the tapping points, it changes, it evolves. It almost starts unraveling and going deeper to the root cause, and it just naturally happens, which is why it's so important that when I work with somebody, that they're happy to work with me, because we're having a deep and meaningful conversation, because it's going to, and I'm saying this as if I don't want to imply you can't do this on your own, because you can. Emotional freedom technique, EFT. If you Google it, you will there's a huge resource. I mean, I've put videos on YouTube on my channel, probably in the first lockdown. So I don't think it was such a huge Ken Dodd hairdo, but I'm sat outside on the garden with birds and cats running by. But you can do this for yourself, and make it a regular routine, and it just works. And you just need to be honest with yourself of what you're thinking and what you're feeling, and that's the added benefit of working with somebody, is I always feel I'm in a privileged position, because I can hear what somebody's saying, and I can feed it back, because sometimes you don't always recognize things yourself. I mentioned at the beginning that if any points are sore or uncomfortable, to miss them out. And that's important, because, and also, once I've been through this and we've refined it a few times, some points, and usually the facial ones, are so impactful for people. And that might be after they've left, they've created a process that I'm just going to use those points in a go-to situation. So everybody will have their preference. Okay, so let me just quickly kind of say now. So I'm going to invite you now to tap along with me. Okay. And in that invitation, I'm going to ask you, you're all on mute, so you can either say things out loud or you can just think them. And when I say you can just think them, the unconscious mind that we're working with, or is mirroring or echoing in the body, doesn't know the difference between real or imagined. So you can just think these processes, and I'll add something else to that in a minute before we go. So okay. So I'm going to invite you now to tap along with me. So I'm just going to make it very generic. So our setup statement is, even though I have these thoughts, I have this feeling, I can choose to change. Even though I have this thought, I have these feelings, I can choose to change. Even though I have these thoughts, I have these feelings, I can choose to change. And it might be, in fact, you might want to say, even though I have this problem, I can choose to change. And always remember, it could be, I deeply and completely accept myself, love and forgive myself. Okay, so from here, just notice if you're feeling anything in the body as you're doing this. Going to the top of the head. Okay, and it could be these thoughts, these feelings, this thought, these feelings, this problem, this thought, these feelings, this problem, this thought, these feelings, this problem. Okay, I'm going to come down to the corner of the eye. Okay, these thoughts, these feelings, this problem. Well, another thing was worth mentioning here is it's not uncommon to belch during this. It's very, very, and it's actually in the trainings that we go through for all of this, it's brought up because it's actually a sign of something shifting. It's a really interesting phenomenon, so I must say that up front. Okay, these thoughts, these feelings, this problem. Okay, following the eye socket round to the center. These thoughts, these feelings, this problem. What's going on for me right now? What's going on for me right now? Okay, at any point, you can switch sides. You don't have to. It's up to you. These thoughts, these feelings, this problem. Okay, this thought, these feelings. What's going on for me? What's going on for me right now? What I feel, what I think. What I feel, what I think. Okay, on to the next one. What's going on for me right now? Always remembering to breathe, because sometimes we can tense up as we're overthinking things. What's going on for me right now? These thoughts, these feelings. What's going on for me right now? These thoughts, these feelings. Okay, to the chest, these thoughts, these feelings, these thoughts, these feelings. What's going on for me right now? Okay, into the arm. These thoughts, these feelings. What's going on for me right now? These thoughts, these feelings. What's going on for me right now? Okay, and I'm going on to my thumb. Yeah, we go. So that's just on the side there. On every finger, it's the same, that junction between it on the nail bed and the skin. Okay, these thoughts, these feelings, these thoughts, these feelings. What's going on for me right now? Next finger. These thoughts, these feelings. What's going on for me right now? These thoughts, these feelings. These thoughts, these feelings. These thoughts, these feelings. These thoughts, these feelings. Okay, on to the crash shot point. Okay, pause, take a big breath. Okay. And does anybody, I mean, it's a bit rushed. I do know, and it's very generic, but has anybody got any instant thoughts, any feedback? Anybody notice anything as they were doing that? Tumbleweed.
Well, I'm always happy to share. I was waiting for anybody else to say anything, but I'll always contribute. I even felt a little bit sick.
Okay. Yeah.
I could feel it culminating in my gut, sort of upper gut. You said about noticing what else is going on in your body, but yeah, I felt sort of a sicky feeling sort of here and underneath my rib cage.
Yeah, so it's important. So that's one round. So I would just go round after round after round after round with people until we're honing it and we're getting what we want, because it evolves. It evolves. It could be chasing the feelings, chasing the sensations. It evolves. So that is the basic recipe. It's as simple and as powerful as that. And I say simple, it's points to remember. But I do have a handout which I can make available. Either if people want to email me, they can do. Or Sarah, is it better that I don't know how to make it better accessible, through me or through you guys?
Well, if you want to let me have it,
yeah.
And then I can, when I share the links, I can share it with that as well.
Yeah. Okay. I'll do that. That's fine. So let me I want to add this extra piece in here. So I mean, this is a really powerful technique, and I know some really profound results from it, from either people I've trained with or the people I've worked with. One of the things to add is, so in times of crisis, when people use this, you don't want to be sat on the bus going, because you're guaranteed to create some space. But what you can do, I mean, what the interesting thing is, as I said, what we want to do is create movement in the skin, because we're creating that tactile thing. So what you can do is you can just put some pressure there and just you almost like you're in deep thought. And this isn't an uncommon thing. Do you notice how these things, it's not uncommon for us to hold ourselves here. This is quite a reassuring thing. It's almost as if the body knows what to do. Even this expression here, there's 2 points here called emotional stress relief points. Whoop. God, stop looking at the camera, Andrew. You're doing weird things. It's there. Which we're covering when we do this. So these are natural things. We're just kind of, we're remembering what we've forgotten, perhaps. So yeah, you can. And it's interesting that there's a short process called the 6-step tapping process, and all that does is the points on the head. So the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then onto the chest 6. That one ends by placing a hand onto the wrist. I've got that on a video on YouTube as well, because the 6-step tapping process. But yeah, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are the go-to points, and it's almost, imagine like a question mark coming around the face. Right, that's 29 minutes. Sorry, is that Angela? I put my glasses on. I think Angela's got a question. Oh, there you are.
Could I just ask, how often would you use this, as and when, or as a routine process?
Okay, so I would say, so I've just worked with a lady on this, and I have asked her to create a routine that she does every morning, specifically for her, because there was something quite big going on. Go on silent next time, Andrew. But as in when, whenever you, and also, as I was saying, you don't have to kind of do that. And the other thing to add is, real or imagined. I know people who, when they can't even do this, just touching, just whatever, imagine tapping on those points. The body, the mind doesn't know the difference between real or imagined. Once you've experienced it, you know what it feels like. And just to emphasize that, athletes rehearse and practice things in their mind. I've worked as a swimming coach, and I would always have the swimmers imagine a race before competing. So the brain does not know the difference between real or imagined. So you can have quite effective, profound results from imagining tapping on these points as well. If you're in a situation where something's happening and you can't do the tapping for whatever reason, you can do that. So as in when, really, Angela, it's your preference. And when I work with somebody, I'll get a deeper understanding for what's going on for them, and from that I can make recommendations. But it's really down to the individual how often they feel it's beneficial to them. A regular routine with anything is always beneficial, because practice is, you get the results in a much deeper, longer lasting way.
Thank you.
Andrew, I just sat there thinking about it, how I'm going to put this into practice, and how and as I said earlier, the train analogy, not the tapping on the train, but the train analogy you did earlier on in the week really resonated for me. And would you suggest that when we notice we're getting on that emotional train, would you suggest that maybe that's a good time for us to then use the EFT, because we're noticing some feelings and some thoughts that might be coming up for us?
Absolutely. And I think it's a great analogy. It talks about the train of thought, being if you're noticing you're stood at a platform and you got a thought come in, you go woof, and you go off with that train of thought, and you suddenly and you start feeling it, whatever it is. It's like, okay, that's what I'm thinking, that's what I'm feeling. Okay, so that's the phrase, that's the thought I'm going to use. And I guess using that analogy, what you're going to do is enable yourself to step off that train of thought and be outside and see it for what it really is. So yeah, if you notice you get on that train of thought, then that's what you use whilst doing the tapping, for sure.
Can I ask you just one more quick question? Sorry, I feel like this is my personal session. I'm so sorry. But you were using it for mostly negative thoughts. Is it a thing that you can flip on the other side and use it for positive thoughts as well?
Yeah, sorry, very good point. Yes, so it is interesting that the usual approach for EFT is that we're dealing with the negative things to drop down the impact on that subjective scale. And why I said ideally I'm looking down to come down to a 1 or a 2, and it may say 3, but 1 or 2 really low, ideally 1, 2. At that point you can flip it around. And you can start talking about setting goals, setting ambitions, talking about the things that you want to achieve. So you just need to drop down what's the block first, and then you can flip it around and work on the future pace, for sure. Yeah, you can. Ruth, you've come unmuted.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I do a bit of Qigong, and what I found interesting about this is there's an exercise in Qigong which is very much about tapping, and you tap all different points. It's slightly different, you use all your fingers, but I just found it really interesting that there was that similarity there.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, it's got its origins in at least 2 different kind of Chinese practices, acupuncture and I think 5 energy medicine. And yeah, it's I haven't looked, I'd have to go back through my notes to look at the origin specifically. But yeah, this isn't, it's as most modern practices, as I said, mindfulness, all these things, they're nothing new. They're just somebody putting almost a filter over the top of something which is really deep and got some huge depth, and making it accessible to everybody, so that we can use it ourselves without perhaps doing that in-depth kind of study. It's something really effective, something really useful, which, as you said, it can be done you can do it with people, or it's a practice you can use for yourself as well. Right. It's a brief kind of overview, hopefully a meaningful, something which you can take away. And obviously, and Sarah, you'll distribute the I still didn't put it on silent, sorry. You'll distribute that little tapping sheet I've got there, which has kind of got the extra information. As with anything, there is always a little bit more, but I think that's the basic recipe. And when we're working with individuals, you can always hone it and add some extra flavors which do exist.
Can I just say thank you, because the whole week's been really interesting and informative. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
I love
Thank you, Andrew. That's really interesting.
Thanks.
You're welcome. All right. And again, I think the recordings are going to be made available. And that'll come out on the information with Sarah as well.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Have a good day. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye. Bye.